The U.S. Attorney's Office has finished a review of problems with the racial climate at Boston Latin School. There was criticism of how the problems were handled by school staff and recommendations for improvement. The review followed a request from local civil rights groups. Our guest is from one of the groups, the Lawyers Committee for Civil Rights and Economic Justice. We'd like to welcome the Education Director, Matt Cregor. Thank you very much for being with us.
Thank you for having me, Chris.
First of all, talk about what was found here, because some of this has been found before, and some things maybe put a new light on what's happened.
That's right. So the U.S. Attorney's Office used its power under the Title IV of the Civil Rights Act of 1964 to investigate claims of a racially hostile school environment of Boston Latin, and they found a violation of that federal statute. This is a big deal because Title IV is what the Department of Justice has used to litigate scores of civil rights cases and school desegregation cases across the South. To bring it to bear here, I think, validates the concerns first raised by students and parents about the harms done in the classroom.
Well, I guess there was one civil rights violation here. What was that about?
It was about a young black female who was threatened by a student who was holding an electrical cord and said, "I would lynch you," and used an expletive in the process. In doing so, what the U.S. Attorney found was that this was an instance of racial harassment and that her civil rights were violated because when she brought this to the attention of the school really did very little until it was much too little, much too late. It's that act of deliberate indifference that the U.S. Attorney's Office focused on, and that's what cleared their bar, which is a very high bar set by the courts, for a federal civil rights violation at the school.
And I think there are a couple of other cases that were mishandled by the staff.
Yes, that's right. And in the eyes of the U.S. Attorney, these did not clear that high bar to what is a civil rights violation of our federal civil rights laws. Coupling what they found with what the district itself found in its own second round of investigation really suggests that there's a lot of work that we can do at Latin, but really a lot of work that we can do as a district to make sure that our students feel safe and welcome to pursue their equal civil right to an education.
Talk about how this affects multiple students, because a lot of us read about these things as discrete incidents, and we think, well, that affects one person or maybe one family or two families, but what's it like, especially for students of color in the whole school?
Yeah, I think these things, some of these things are minor. Some, like the incident that happened to this one young woman, are far more major, but each of the smaller microaggressions, if you will, add up and are magnified in a couple of ways. One, over the course of days, weeks, months, where they become routine. The other is especially true if you are the lone black female of color in that classroom, or you don't see peers of color reflected in the diversity of the room, such that you are made to be the spokesperson for your race. You are left to be in the defensive posture as people make candid comments that they don't think may offend you.
Well, what about the remedies? Because there have been some things that have already begun at the school, and there's a new headmaster right now. So what about how much that has accomplished?
I want to note how encouraged we are at the beginning of the school year for two reasons. One, the district agreed to 3 years of monitoring from the U.S. Attorney's Office or the Department of Justice to make sure that it is not only talking the talk, but walking the walk in addressing these violations. That monitoring will make sure that the training, the restorative justice and the disciplinary contexts, the protocols that have been established in this resolution agreement are followed. But beyond that, the district and the mayor have commented how the lessons learned from this are ones they want to extend throughout the district to make sure all of our students feel safe and welcomed. They've taken good steps in expanding a student rights application that the members of the Boston Student Advisory Council made so that students can enter in to the district and let them know when they see these things happening. We think these are positive steps, and we intend to work with the district to make sure these things do come true.
You know, I went to Latin. I know it was in a different time,
Yeah.
but one of the things I liked about the school is you have these students from different backgrounds coming in there, and you're in contact with people you never had to be around before in a personal way. And but I think what's still the case, you've got to prepare students for that. What do you think needs to be done?
I think a couple of things. First, the Latin that folks of my generation knew was far more racially diverse. First through a desegregation order, and then through the voluntary efforts of the district. The only thing that's changed since then is our will as a city to promote that as a priority. Right? And so right now, Black and Latino students make up only 20% of the school, whereas they make up 75% of the district. We're going to have to revisit our admission structure to make sure that we're attracting and welcoming the future leaders from all neighborhoods in this city so that they can learn from and with each other. I think some of the trainings that the U.S. Attorney and the district agreed to are going to go a long way to making sure we learn how to learn together and how to live together. But it's incumbent on all of us to help raise this priority for our city so that our youth are there together.
We're talking with Matt Cregor from the Lawyers Committee for Civil Rights. Matt, looking at the more recent history at the school, there is sign that if you do the recruiting and you offer some of the training to take the exam, you can get more students of color in the school, especially Black and Latino students. But we also saw how that tailed off. So what do you think needs to be done?
I think it's time to look at the admissions policy. I think the steps that the district has taken to improve recruitment for the exam are in the right direction, but the way that you kind of get into that pipeline is through advanced work classes, and your admission into that pipeline is determined by your intelligence test in third grade, which is based on what you learned in second grade. It's a long time before one is ever thinking about middle school or high school that we're deciding who gets to be on that track. So we have a lot of work to do as a city to broaden that. And one thing we know, when we have a school as selective and as proud as Latin is, we can do things to identify who are our top performing students in each of our district schools so that we see those students and their neighborhoods, their races, their ethnicities, their backgrounds reflected in the student body of Latin as a whole. And then we're making sure that young people from all of our blocks have a chance to represent themselves and know each other in Latin.
Thank you very much for being with us.
Thank you.
Matt Cregor from the Lawyers Committee for Civil Rights and Economic Justice. We'll have more news in just a moment.